All right. This came to me on, I received this on Martin Luther King Day, and it's actually a translation of Psalm 15. Psalm 15. Lord, who can be trusted with power, and who may act in your place? Those with passion for justice, who speak the truth from their hearts, who have let go of selfish interests and grown beyond their own lives, who see the wretched as their family and the poor as their flesh and blood. They alone are impartial and worthy of the people's trust. Their compassion lights up the whole earth, and their kindness endures forever.
Thank you, James O'Barr. Here we have Tonio Brown, or... Okay.
Just a brief recollection. I remember when you were at the poetry New Year's party, and you both told two of your prose poems about your experiences in the military, and you recited in Urdu. I don't know if it was a poem or a song.
Song.
A song. So thank you. I learned some things about you that night.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, friends. So, Tony, before you go, would you like to share a few words?
After one.
Yeah. And Tonio Brown.
Just feeling inspired and humbled and loving both of you.
So,
I am so grateful each of you is here. Thank you. Let's get the layout of what's going to happen tonight first. There's some beautiful food up here that's still being brought out. I hope you're hungry. And so at any point, go on over and keep the line going, okay? There's, you'll see what's there. We also have some rocks over here. And there's paint in pens and brush form. If you would write a blessing, even if it's just a symbol, something that Zahid and Ann can take home with them and have memories of. And so at this little table over here, our intention tonight, I think, is to heap so much love on Ann and Zahid that it carries them through this travail that's happened. And one of the things we'd like to do is to have each of you come up and tell a story or a poem, a word of inspiration, some way that they've impacted you, because I think they've impacted all of our lives. So we know Ann and Zahid, if there's any good done in this community, Ann and Zahid stop and show up and help, no matter what's in their way. So I wanted to tell a little story about Ann and Zahid's family, that used to live in Pakistan. He no longer has family there. It's so crazy that they would talk about sending him back there because he has no family there anymore. But I went on an anti-drone march to Pakistan, and I had an email contact with Zahid's dad. But turned out it wasn't a contact they used very often. And so even though I was emailing, they didn't receive it. And so I just kind of showed up, and they stopped everything in their lives. So I want to tell you what was in their lives. Zahid's dad ran a free clinic in the community that hundreds of people went to. I got to go to...
A day. Hundreds of people a day.
Hundreds of people a day. There was a beautiful women's clinic. There was the x-ray area. There was short lines, and people seemed happy to be there. It's a really beautiful little clinic. Zahid's father was the leader of this clinic, the one who did the fundraising. They have one fundraising event a year, and it was when I was there. He hadn't stopped in a long time, but he gave all of that up. He turned it all over because some friends and I showed up that he had never met, but we were friends of Zahid. They brought us to the mosque that since the 1100s has fed people every day for free. The vendors line the outside of the mosque. He brought us to the Red Mosque, and this is a few days after Malala Yousafzai was shot. And all I could hear, I don't speak the language, but I heard Malala, the word Malala, over and over. It was the cleric saying, this is not our religion, we are a religion of peace. This is not who we should be. These are the experiences that your dad gave to me, and your mom, and your sister, and these graceful people that Zahid comes from. So it's everything that I've seen you do here is what your family did for me there. Anything that you think that is good in Zahid is what I saw in his family and what I've seen in him for years. And I want everyone to see that. So that's my story today.
Lots of people have come in. Would you talk about that?
Yes. Well, if you're going to leave tonight before we do this, at some point we'll run the yarn around the room and be tied together for a short time, and then we'll break the yarn, create a bracelet out of it, and carry that bracelet along with us, so that until we hear the results of Zahid and Ann's immigration hearing, it'll keep him present and Ann present in our mind, so that we can send as much good energy as possible. If you're going to leave before we do this as a room, then come up to me and I'll give you some yarn. But we'll have a little ceremony for that in a little bit. There is beautiful food over here, and there's rocks over here if you feel creative. There's paint and rocks so that Ann and Zahid can carry your blessings home. Now, I'd like all of you to come up and speak, but I'd really like Dennis. He has a message from the Veterans for Peace main office. Okay.
Zahid in this community is the only Unitarian Quaker Muslim who continually confuses people who say, "What faith are you?" And he can say yes. Zahid has been a member of Veterans for Peace 109, the Rachel Corrie chapter, for a long time, and is currently president. And it's not every person who gets a letter from a national organization. Zahid is one of those, and I wanted to share that with this community. Veterans for Peace understands the very human need to feel safe and secure in our homes and in our everyday lives. We live in a world with perpetual fears of unprotectable violence from twisted ideological extremists, whether it be the violence of a man from Uzbekistan behind the wheel of a truck in Manhattan, a mentally deranged, disturbed man in Las Vegas shooting into a concert crowd with automatic weapons, a homegrown neo-Nazi in Charlottesville driving his car into anti-racist protesters, or a white supremacist ex-convict with a knife riding mass transit train in Portland, Oregon. Knowing that this violence exists means we need reasonable heads to put those fears into perspective and collective work to replace our culture of violence with a culture of peace. We, as veterans, know the dangers that lurk in the dark corners of the world. Our nightmares are full of them. However, we know that there is a greater danger right here in the United States. That danger is injustice. The injustice that this letter is concerned is that of the persecution of a disabled U.S. Army veteran, Muhammad Zahid Chaudhry. We understand that following his honorable discharge from the military, Zahid attempted to become a U.S. citizen unsuccessfully. Now he faces deportation on frivolous grounds. When our government, in earnest and out of real concern for the safety of its citizenry, becomes overzealous and grasps at straws to deport a military veteran, one who has been a pillar of his community, the question of state racism is unavoidable. Is the persecution of Zahid Chaudhry simply because of his name, and thus a manifestation of Islamophobia? His record of service to his country and community should speak for itself when judging Zahid's character and love for his country. Since his separation from the military, Zahid has worked tirelessly to make the U.S. a better place to pursue the American dream. He has been married to a U.S. citizen for 17 years now. The letter was written when it was 16 years. Zahid has an outstanding record of community service, having assisted the homeless, volunteered with the fire department, the Red Cross, and Habitat for Humanity. He and his wife have been involved in senior care, community garden projects, and raising money for charity. In addition, Zahid's leadership as president of Veterans for Peace, Rachel Corrie Chapter 109 in Olympia, has demonstrated his commitment to educating on and carrying out nonviolent approaches to resolve conflict, build peace, and end injustice. Zahid is facing deportation to Pakistan, a country that is no longer his home. The United States is his home, the place where his family is and where he and his wife have worked to nurture positive community connections. A reasonable mind would know that to deport Zahid to Pakistan is to place both he and his wife in danger, as they would be a target to those very extremist groups whose violence we dread so much. Zahid would be considered a traitor by extremists in Pakistan for serving in our military, and he would be living in fear of reprisal. Let not fear rule the decision of our courts. All testimonies from friends, community leaders, veterans praise Zahid as a man of peace, a loving and compassionate man, an extraordinary person, a man that is a positive contributor to his family, friends, and community. Veterans for Peace ask that anyone in a position to judge Zahid's character and his commitment to his country reflect deeply on his remarkable and multifaceted service to our nation over the many years before deciding his fate. It's inconceivable that men would make such a sacrifice for his country would be treated this way. Our veterans, regardless of their birthplace, do not deserve to be ripped from their homes and deported, particularly when they have dedicated themselves to building community and a just and peaceful future. Our veterans and community leaders deserve our gratitude, not irrational judgments based on fear. Given our current political environment, it may be more important than ever that we lift our image to the world, demonstrate justice still prevails in the U.S., and dismiss this deportation hearing in favor of Zahid and allow him his right to become a citizen of the country he has dedicated his life to serving. Veterans for Peace Board of Directors.
Thank you, Dennis. Dennis and Mark and Zahid have really kept our Veterans for Peace chapter alive. And Jim. So would anyone else like to come up and tell a story? Mark, come on up. And if you would like to do so, come on over to the side. And if you see the yarn that I was carrying around, let me know. Yes.
What I know of Zahid is when working with him for Veterans for Peace, and then suddenly he just seems to be everywhere else that I show up. And someone else said, he and Ann are the people that show up. And it's a real inspiration to see people that are that generous and that giving. And I've really appreciated working with Zahid. He has spurred some really good ideas in our chapter. Most recently, the Veterans Peace Scholarship that we'll be awarding sometime this fall. And I've also appreciated just the personal friendship. Ann and Zahid are really a generous, I guess, welcome, great members of our community. And I really admire his, I guess, his faith in the United States government. For one person who probably could have a reason not to like the U.S. government, well, the United States, because the government is pursuing him, he still has faith in America. And I really appreciate that. Sometimes I don't, and it's good to see, remind that even when people sometimes disagree with America and are not treated well, they can still believe in America. So I'm hoping that this hearing will validate that belief, and I really look forward to a successful hearing. So thank you much, bro.
Thank you, bro.
This is such a good crowd right now, so I think I'm going to start the yarn around. If you will just put a couple of loops around your wrist and then pass it to the next person. Keep it connected, and then we'll break it all at the same time.
Zahid and Ann are regular participants in our New Year's Eve game night that we have at our household. And the story I just aside of Zahid that you may not know is he's how enthusiastic and competitive he is playing games, and it's just been lovely. He's been a part of Olympia Friends meeting, and just has just been part of a dear part of our community. I wanted to read a poem that I wrote, which is revolutionary in its own way. It's called Atonement Prayer for the United States. The idea of atonement is actually about being at one and coming together. O God of mercy, justice, and truth, you who have raised up nations in your name and have brought them low, hear our prayer of atonement. We, who in our arrogance and pride have placed ourselves above your holy order and have exalted ourselves above all nations, call your name. We, who have plundered the earth's natural bounty to preserve our comfort, wealth, and safety in a measure far greater than our share. We, who have abandoned you to worship the idols of hatred and contempt, hear our prayer. Our divisions increase in number as we fuel the fires of resentment in our furnace of disparity. And with bellows of fear and distrust, we heat to white hot what holds us together in law and harmony. Forging asunder, red and blue, rural and urban, Muslim, Christian, Jew, white, black, brown, immigrant or native, legal and illegal, traitor, patriot, us, them. O merciful one, save us from our failing institutions and leaders who bend truth to serve their desires, not yours, and who have made selfishness a virtue. Protect us from those who have betrayed us as we have betrayed them, and our surrender to the demons of distractions, indifference, and despair. Open our eyes to what we have become. Let us not turn away in disgust and shame, or strut away in affronted anger. or run from our creation in fear. God of justice, mercy, and truth, bring us back into unity with you in your one law of love. Bring us back to your holy presence. Fill us with your mercy and love. Provide sweet balm to our callousness, and quench our heat with your love. Direct our thoughts and actions to those that will mend our bonds and return us to your divine center. That was sort of an Old Testament. That was sort of an Old Testament version. Here's the New Testament version. Jesus, we've really screwed this country up. Help us with your love.
Thank you, Ben.
Wendy, before you get in the loop, can you bring me that file folder that's back there on that table, please?
Who was it? Yeah.
All right. Who would like to share something? All right.
Yay.
Dear mentor, an amazing friend.
Okay, so I hadn't planned to speak, but I have to speak. We're all here because we are celebrating our friendship with our wonderful friends, Zahid and Ann. And I'd just like you all to express that right now out loud in whatever way that seems apparent to you. Clapping is the usual way, but if you do that right now, because today, this is the day we have. This is the day we have. Yeah. You guys are wonderful. So, you know, the best, so I've been thinking about Zahid all week, and the fact that this is his final time that he goes to Seattle. And for those of you who can, I hope you will attend. And we have to, in whatever way, and that might be prayers, or it might be energy, but we have to send him positive thoughts and believe that the best thing will happen. I've known Zahid since about 2004, when we started something called Voices for Change, and then it morphed into Thurston County Progressive Network, and on from there. And primarily through activism, we've gotten to know one another. I know he's busy and involved in so many things in the community. When I wrote my letter to the judge, which I wasn't impressed with that judge, I have to say, but one of the last sentence that I said was, you know, if he doesn't deserve to live in this country, then I don't know who deserves to live in this country. And, you know, let's just really send all the positive and celebrate tonight, because Ann is here and Zahid is here, and, you know, they're wonderful people, and we have to tell them that tonight. So, okay. Love you guys. So who's next? So I didn't plan mine, so you guys have to get up here too.
I don't know what to say, but I guess a lot to say too. I got a lot to say. I don't know when I started circulating with you, but you're well wired. And I'm glad I'm part of that wiring somehow or other. What's impressed me most, I suppose, is that Ann and Zahid know how things work. Amazing. It's not just relationships with people, which is, to me, utterly fundamental. We're all trying to discover what it means to be a human being. And that's a lot to take on in this world. But the other side is he knows the computer system inside and out. And I learned that intimately when he helped me with my computer and all the networks that I'm trying to be part of and so on. To me, that's background knowledge. And I feel that he's going to win this week. I really do. And here's part of the winning right here. The community that you have entered into and become a part of and involved all of us with. I don't know if I should say these things, but I need to talk a little bit about India and Pakistan. Because I've had a lot of intimate experiences over there for the last 13, 14 years, where I go there every fall and portray Gandhi, where his family comes from. Not on the Pakistan side, but the Indian side. I go to Chandigarh for the Global Youth Peace Festival. I spend 1-2 weeks there, and then I go to other places in India portraying Gandhi. So in Chandigarh is in the Punjab conference, which the English people split in half arbitrarily, suddenly, without any real input. So Pakistan's on one side and India's on the other. Lahore, where you come from, is on the Pakistan side. And I was invited for a couple years to Firozpur, which is just across the river from Lahore. And I never got to Lahore, but I was there portraying Gandhi at a women's college. And one night they took us to the border, where ordinarily you cross the border from one side to the other, but nobody could do that. But nonetheless, they put on a show there. The show was military-type men from Pakistan and military-type men from India, kind of competing on all the movements they could make. And everybody would go there for entertainment. Entertainment. So that's an intimate type of thing. The Global Youth Peace Festival that I go to every fall started out with a few people from Pakistan and a few people from India. And for the first few years, they would come together. And then that's when I started getting involved after a few years. And then they started opening up the festival. And now they attempt to get 30, 40, 50 countries represented at these Global Youth Peace Festival. And the theme is always nonviolence. And they pick out various issues, especially women and cultural differences to emphasize in that whole thing. So the last few years it's been very difficult to bring people from Pakistan to the festival. Last year nobody was allowed by India to have a visa. Years before only 19 women made the year before, and so on. So there's a tension there, but even despite all this governmental conflict from one side or the other, the people that I circulate with want peace. They want togetherness.
They love each other.
Okay, I thought you'd give me time. Yes. So I've had many experiences. They asked me not to do much about it, but just to witness. So I've been invited to witness. One year they had women on the Pakistan side assembled in some building, and women on the Indian side assembled in some building, and they Skyped the affair, and they used that technique to talk about the treatment of India in Pakistan and the treatment of women in Pakistan and the treatment of women in India. And they sat around tables, the groups of women, and each table made a list of the kinds of treatment, and then they each table exchanged that with the tables on the other side by Skype. It was quite an experience. I didn't have anything to say. I just listened and watched and witnessed. So I guess it says that despite the governmental stuff, and the vested interest stuff of organizations that have prejudices, there's still folks who want to break through that, and they're working hard to break through that. So you have given me an inspiration to do this. You have given me encouragement to do this, and I never thought I'd do anything like this in my life, but things happen with people like you, and I thank you.
Things happen.
Bernie Meyer, otherwise known as American Gandhi, and takes Gandhi's message to India from here from Olympia, and also does the peace walk around this capital lake. And also on a Mother's Day, the real intention, the mothers of the world didn't want their kids to go and go kill other mothers' kids, and goes to the ground zero. If it, at the Kitsap Peninsula, which if it became, separated, it will be the third biggest nuclear power on the planet. And gets arrested there every Mother's Day nearly, to make a point, to challenge. Yes, thank you, Bernie, appreciate it.
I'm on probation right now. I got another 2 months. I did community service in India as well as here for this last arrest. I just want to mention I have one hell of an experience, so it's a little hard to talk right now about this because I just got Arundhati Roy's book, The End of Imagination. And the first major chapter is about nuclear weapons. And I've been resisting nuclear weapons since 1974, but to read her and how she weaves everything together so graphically, so well, I highly recommend Arundhati Roy's writings on this type of thing. It's tremendous.
Yes, thank you. The next person, amazing. Bernie Meyer, what you may not know, that back in the 60s, he was a Catholic minister, and they went to the armament facilities of the United States and poured their blood to make a stand for peace. Thank you.
Thank you so. Many of us are connected right now. If you've had to slip your bonds for a moment, wrap your arm back up with this, and for a moment we'll all be connected in a circle.
I didn't know this was going to happen. I love Bollywood and Lollywood movies, and often there's a marriage where the husband and wife are tied together, and I feel like this is a marriage here. Thank you so much for being part of our marriage.
Wow, Ann and Zahid. So we hear over and over again that we're really one. So in this moment, as much as possible, feel how connected we are and how much we're one and how we're going to stand with you. So this will keep Ann and Zahid in our minds for the next 2 days until we hear the outcome of this. Hopefully many of you will be up there with me and Zahid and Ann and many other people as we find out. So at this moment it's wool, and we can break these bonds, but know that really we're still connected. So you can just pull them apart and fix a knot and know that we're still connected.
Tell us what you want us to do.
Hello, my name is Srinath.
I'm Meenu Nath.
Couple of things I just want to share, and then Meenu wants to build on that. We had heard through the Quaker community about this mystical guy named Zahid Chaudhry in the community, But for whatever reason, for many years, our paths never really crossed. And then they did cross to an extent that it created some deep bonds between us because of our backgrounds. My family is originally from India, as is Meenu's, and we connected instantly with Zahid. He's sort of been a beacon of hope, a beacon of the go-to person, a beacon of optimism in the community. And whenever we have hosted events at our house, he and Ann have always accepted whenever they could. They showed up with anything and everything they could, and then their spirit spread around. As you know, Zahid is not bashful about speaking. And I've always enjoyed his comments. He takes a while to get to his point, but the reason I think is that he wants to create a story for you to get to understand the broader context in which things are happening in our world. And if you don't have that, if you just have the buzzwords that go out, then it's no different from the administration that's giving us hell. When we first met, we connected because of our respective backgrounds. India, Pakistan, really, one subcontinent. Generally, that whole area, they were known as Desis, and really, as our American Gandhi mentioned, people want to be together on the ground. They really do. It's the politicians and the military that wants to keep these divisions alive. And the same thing is true here. The other part that I wanted to share with you is about betrayal. And my family moved from India to Kenya my dad went there in 1938, and my mom joined him 10 years later. My siblings were all, we were a total of 6, were all born and raised there, and we always saw Kenya as home. And so did they. And my dad never had thoughts about going back to India. But then in the early 1970s, with what was happening in Uganda, suddenly they realized the writing was on the wall, and this was no longer really their country. Just like in many other parts of the world, Indians had contributed very strongly to the economy. They had helped build the railways. They had helped build up the economy in terms of running the shops and servicing the locals and so forth. A very strong, vibrant community there, and still is. But they felt that, and in 1973, suddenly my dad said, we're just taking off. And if any of you have watched that movie, Mississippi Masala, there is a very poignant scene in there where a local gentleman tells this Indian family who has been there for literally generations, and he says things that we can resonate from this side of the fence. He said, Africa is for Africans, black Africans. And that was the time when he decided to leave, this gentleman. And that's the way I think our family felt too. We just felt that we just had to pick up and leave, and literally just picked up and left. And I'd never been to India, so I landed there on a ship, and that was foreign soil to me. And then I came here in 1989, and we essentially immigrated and became part of the local community as well. And we've been in Olympia for 18 years. Until very recently, until what's been happening in the last few years, I always felt this was home. And those bothersome thoughts come again: is this really home? And who is actually accepting you and who's not? But that's the way it is. So in that context, I wanted to also pass it on to Meenu. She has probably a deeper connection to this concept of betrayal because of the journey her father took in Tanzania. Our families had very similar pathways. Her family had gone to Tanzania. But why don't you tell that story about your dad?
So the reason I'm here is just because I want to tell you my story, which I think resonates with the feeling that Zahid is going through. And that is, my father went to Africa in Tanzania in 1948, and he left under very difficult circumstances in 1983. So in this time while he was in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, he decided to change his citizenship from Indian to the Tanzanian citizenship. So when he took that up, he thought it would come with all the benefits and all the advantages of being a local Tanzanian. And he immersed himself in the culture, and he worked hard. He, just successful in every way. And he was there for about 35 or 36 years. And in that period, he decided he was going to buy a piece of land and settle, and with all of us there. And he bought a piece of land, and when the time came for him to build that house, that dream home, the rising tensions between the Asian community and the local Africans was on the rise. And the government came up with anti-Asian things that were Asian businesses were threatened, and a lot of land that belonged to the Asians were taken over, and Asians lost their business and all of that. So my father lost his land, and it was taken over, and when things became really difficult, he couldn't send money out to as a way to at some point he was thinking that there might be a chance that he would settle in India, and if that's the case, then he wanted to get some money across, and he couldn't send even 1 shilling out, because of the terms under which he was a citizen there. And so in 1983, he found himself literally selling his school that he was running for about 25 years, and that money that he had to leave all of his savings and all of his hard-earned money in that period of time in Tanzania, and he and my mom boarded a plane in 1983, literally with just enough cash to take them through the trip. And I think when the plane took off, the feeling that my mother conveyed to me was that sense of betrayal, that feeling that after all these years, that he felt, and that was the place where he met my mom, where he married my mother, and all 3 of us were born there. And so where every important event in his life he could connect to this place was no longer home for him. And when he left, it was under those conditions. And I think I understand that sense of betrayal. And maybe I didn't live it, but I do know what it means to not have a home for a very long period of time. Because even though I was a citizen of Tanzania, I never had a chance to vote because I was not of that age. And I left just before I was ready to vote, and then I came to India. I spent 6 years in India, and in that time, I earned a pharmacy degree, and then I came to the United States. When I came to the United States, I knew I wanted to be here. So when we got our green card, I remember looking at those 2 words, resident, alien. I like the word resident, but I didn't quite like the word alien. And the day I got my letter saying that we were to report to the Department of Immigration to take the oath ceremony, and we were going to be getting our citizenship, that was a big moment. And I remember coming back thinking, this is the moment I was really waiting for. And now, like Shri was saying, I don't know if I'm very sure of that anymore. But I think I understand Zahid's feeling of betrayal, and I just want you to know that today we are here to support you on that.
Yeah, and just about 3 weeks ago, our administration's immigration services took out the phrase "a nation of immigrants" from their tagline. It's not there anymore. They're there to serve the Americans, whatever that might mean.
So we're giving it back to the Indians, right?
That's right. That's
Indians.
Right. That's right. So, regardless of what happens on Monday, I'm sure we're all holding the light for Zahid and Ann, and I know that regardless of where they go, they will be creating the light, and people will be anchored around that, like being drawn to the flame and for shelter and warmth and so forth. So, thanks.
So I feel like in spite of how Zahid and Ann have been treated by our system, they have such generous hearts, and they're concerned about everybody else's needs all the time. And it just amazes me. They have loaned a car to each of our daughters for an indefinite period until they were able to get their own. And just individual acts like that. And also, I want to say that they have invested in an edible forest in their city lot that's just amazing. Earth-friendly, growing tons of wonderful stuff, and they share it too. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. So these guys are wonderful, yada, yada, yada. I won't miss them because they're not going anywhere. And so you'll be just as wonderful after Monday as you were before Monday. And hopefully they won't send you to Seattle anymore. That horrible place. Two things I wanted to say. First one is, so you're wonderful, yada, yada, but because we're all married together, you know, marriages create problems. And if you've ever really gotten involved with Zahid and Ann, you know that somewhere along the line there's going to be a problem. I'm done. Never. So I want to give you an example. See, I met them through a newspaper article in 2008. And the city of Lacey was giving them all kinds of problems about things that I didn't understand. I know nothing about building codes and garages and beams, and I had no knowledge. I said, but you know, I said, this must be solvable. We can get a group of people together. We can solve all these problems because we're all married to each other, and everything will be hunky-dory. And so I organized a whole bunch of people. I'm a pretty good organizer, and I organized a bunch of people to come on over to the house. First, I went with a builder friend who could isolate the difficulties that they were supposedly having with the city of Lacey. And then I organized it. I figured 5 people would show up, and there were about 35 of us. And they needed some kind of beam across their living room, so we got the wood and put the beam across the living room. And then there was something wrong with the garage, and we painted it up really, really nice, you know. And then we said, oh, and he's in a wheelchair, but, you know, this is not wheelchair accessible. So we had some extra wood around. And so the people, no, I'm not handy. I didn't pick up a hammer all day, I have to tell you. And, I sat around and looked pretty, and, you know, and then said thank you to everybody who came. I'm using the we very widely because I didn't pick up a hammer, took some wood, and they made a nice little ramp so he could get into his house, all real nice. I think he even painted it, as I remember. Yes. And they painted it, and painted it, and we thought everything was good. Oh yeah. We painted up so the garage so nice that the city cited them for having an illegal residence or something in the garage. They decided that the ramp that they didn't have before, which now allowed him to get into the house easily, didn't meet disability building codes and would have to be destroyed, and they were going to fine them for it. The beam wasn't the right beam, even though we had the directions from the city building code, and they were going to, and so this marriage landed them in more hell than when we started. And I actually don't know the results of all of that, except that by them having this problem, we created this wonderful community. Wonderful, wonderful community that still exists 10 years later now, I think, to this day. And I'm hoping the city is not bothering you anymore. I won't ask. Because if I ask, we might have to go over to their house again and make more problems. I have an immigration story, too, that I need to tell because it's relevant here. My grandfather, his name was David Klopman, was a Lithuanian Jewish silk merchant. And after World War I, for reasons I do not know, he died way before I was born, he ended up in Turkey with a Turkish passport. How that happens, I don't know, but he did. And in 1924, he came to Ellis Island, and they wouldn't let him in. And they wouldn't let him in not because he was Lithuanian, and not because he was Jewish, not even because he was Turkish, but because he was Oriental. Beats me. I mean, this is This is rather like your government story. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Well, he doesn't easily take no for an answer. See, he went to Canada, and he changed the family name to Albert, and got a watch with his initials, DHA. I have the watch to this day, with his initials on the back. And he came into the country illegally, or undocumentably, as a French Canadian. He did speak French, by the way. He came in as a French Canadian. A side note about that is every year I get letters from the Albert Association, North America. And there are like 72,000 people whose last names is Albert in the U.S., mostly based around Pittsburgh, it seems. And every year I would write them back and say, if you can find even one other Albert in that book, other than my brother, related to me to the 4th degree, I'll take 4 of them. They never write me back. As far as I know, to the day he died, he was never a U.S. citizen. He never, because they would have deported him. He wasn't a U.S. citizen. When the kids were born, they were obviously born in the United States, and therefore they became U.S. citizens. But as far as I know, David Klopman, nee Albert, was never a U.S. citizen. And had they been looking for him, he would have been looking over his shoulder for the 1930s version of ICE for the rest of his life. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next? Either of you comment, or here comes Brother Joseph Darble.
Hey, everybody.
Hey.
It's so nice being a friend among friends, and I don't even know most of you. And what's crazy, too, is I'm probably one of the folks who's known these two the least amount of time. Because my wife and I, we came to Olympia from Arizona a couple years ago. So a thing that keeps coming up is community. We're all one community. We're all in this marriage together, right? And I'm thinking about water. Right? Water from one place is the same as water from the other place, right? It's just water. I think Bill Nye or somebody like that said, you know, for all you know, you could be drinking dinosaur spit. And you know, that's kind of true. So, what does that have to do with anything? What I wanted to say is that when I came here, Zahid and Ann were really where my toes hit the water from one pond to another. So if we're all water and we're all one and all this, well, some people are pretty icy, right? Well, fortunately, my introduction here with these two is kind of my first community-based friendship has been wonderful. It's like a sauna up in here. So I just wanted to say thank you to Ann and Zahid for reaching out to me first thing when I didn't know anybody. I mean, the people to, you know, come up, hey bro, what's your name? You know? That's where it's at. So someone else, get up here.
Get that out of here. So when I first met Ann and Zahid, I hardly knew them at all, and one of the first things Zahid said to us was, we need to break bread together. And so we did, and he invited us over to his house for dinner, and then we invited him to our house for dinner. And the one thing I learned from that was once you break bread with Ann and Zahid, you're friends forever. So, and you'll look here what we're doing tonight. We're all breaking bread. And I hope that after Monday we can all get together again and break bread with Zahid and Ann.
Yay. Hey Douglas, come up here.
Woo!
Well, you come up and get something.
Yeah.
about 8 years ago, something like that, maybe 9. Folks like Jody and half the people in this room would show up for something called the International Day of Peace on September 21st. And there'd be tabling going on. Gandhi would be getting ready, the American Gandhi would be getting ready to go over to India. People would be signing a banner that they signed over there too. And so a community of people that organized things like the International Day of Peace, and then followed up with an unusual group in Bamiyan, Afghanistan, who then emerged as the Afghan Peace Volunteers. And so we had a 24-hour International Day of Peace, whatever year that was. And then in December, I think, they wanted it to be monthly, but we thought, well, we'll just go with the solstice and the equinox and the solstice. And so we did that for about a year and a half, and then it ended up going monthly, which it still is, thanks to you guys and others. But we're over there, I think it was the December one, you'll probably remember it better. The idea is to go like 24/7. In fact, we went 27 hours once, and we went like 22 or 21 on the others while we were still shooting for this 20. And so at about 1 in the morning, in fact, there were 2 times. You're gonna help me straight. Well, on one of them, your uncle is in. We're calling into Pakistan, and there's floods that happened. I mean, the horrible, dangerous floods, and there were people, for safety reasons, in a big area that your uncle was associated with. So there's 30, I don't know, like elementary school age kids or something like that.
Yeah, about 45 kids all together, gathered together. And the floods have happened. They're all displaced. They're not in their home. They're in a different remote village. And here is the friend. He said, Zahid, can you give some inspiration to these kids? And here it is, Brother Douglas, join the call, and you'll tell what happened.
Well, when people realize, wow, they really are hearing me in Iraq or in Gaza or in Afghanistan. In fact, it started here, and you culprit, you, and a few others. The high school hosted a conversation between the Afghan Youth Peace Volunteers in Bamiyan and 2 or 3 classes. It ended up being 60 plus, 16-year-olds getting ready to talk to the peace volunteers in Afghanistan. And we'd vetted the use of the Skype and tested it with China, but we didn't test it with Afghanistan. And the state of Washington had severed. We were unable to make the connection, so we just started up a quick cell phone account and did it via cell phone to cell phone. And you guys captured it from the Veterans for Peace. And then that conversation evolved into more conversations. And so I look over the next time at 1 o'clock in the morning. It's cold. It's really cold. And did you bring the heater? Someone arranged for a heater. And that was really a good idea. And it was, but to keep the thing going, and you were the 3 of us were there for
just 3 in the tent right outside, and it was so cold you won't believe it. In December and January, right there between the night shift between 1 to 5, it gets really cold. But there's a passion, there's a fire in the heart. We cannot have meaningful peace unless the adults of tomorrow, youth of today, can talk to each other. So they would not be bought into politicians' lies and fear-mongering and a war military-industrial complex. So it was very important. And he said, Zahid, you're shivering. I said, it's okay. Keep the conversation going. He said, no, Zahid, you're shivering. It's really bad. Put your feet on that. And, I put on the heater. And, of course, my soul was melting and sock was melting and all that. But, you know, the conversation kept going, you know, and the socks and shoes kept melting, no problem. I said, no, keep on going, it's okay. Just keep on going, keep the conversation. Don't look at me.
Well, you were there for all of this too. What memory do you have of that crazy middle of the night tent talking to people in Pakistan? And yeah,
Just the incredible sense of community with somebody all the way on the other side of the world. And I mean, it was just amazing because sometimes we get all wrapped up in our own little worlds, our own little, you know, space, and we tend to not be conscious of what's going on somewhere else. And so it was really fabulous to be able to talk with them and hear their stories, hear their joys and sorrows, and be part of that.
Do you remember what they said? Because they were saying, and I was asking, I can speak several languages, so I asked, and I talked to a few of them, and then said, Aman Dunya Mein. 3 words. Aman Dunya Mein. Aman Dunya Mein. Peace in the world. And they start singing in unison. Displaced, floods, ravages, and all that. Look what the kids want before they got corrupted, before they got schooled, you know, into war and separation. So, if you remember that song.
you mean it was like a chant to begin with, and the words, and it was we want peace today. Essentially, we want peace today. We want peace now, and then the rhythm of it for this group of 8-year-olds, 10-year-olds, precise as we want peace in the world.
And exuberant.
Oh yes. Oh, it was power, and the response from Bamiyan at the time was the deep, you know, we hear you, we hear that thank you, yeah. So, and that cycling of the listener and the empathizer, and being careful that you're not recreating trauma for people as they're living through something that's been incredibly traumatic recently, but and that edge of yes, this is a time for me to deal with that was so very hard, and I've got my community around, and I need to, you know, take these next steps of pain because it means I'll be better at reconciling, and that's happening in this world among 20-somethings. So, yeah, thank you guys for making it possible with the teenager 20-somethings around the world. Yeah. Pardon. Yeah. Wow, what do we do without our other half? So we were thinking about the people that we've known and that you've known, and there's a drum maker who used to make drums here. I found out he's made 1,300 drums. Bill Cody, Chelsea Nauman, the individual who has taken Johnny Moses's tape recordings and converted them, into he typed them out, and very true to Johnny's story. And so anyhow, he's a drum maker, and this is his most recent drum out of the 1,300. And he knows it's coming to you, and he's blessed it up.
You've always been one of our voices for this community. This just makes it bigger.
Yeah. Good job.
When that conversation was happening out in the park, Afghanistan was the worst place in the world to be a child, and the worst place in the world to be a mom with a child. And they were talking with kids who were displaced by floods in Pakistan, in parts of Pakistan that we could probably say the same thing about. And while they could hear each other, can you imagine how it was for them to have Americans listening? Ann and Zahid, you helped make that happen. You helped those kids be heard. So Thank you.
I have a very brief little thing to share. Is as has already been mentioned, Zahid and Ann are part of the Quaker community here, and Quaker is a term that was put on us from the outside, and for years and years after first emerging, it was the Religious Society of Friends of Truth. And there's been a small group of us looking at the possibility of getting together, exploring, what is the truth of what's going on in the world and how can we compassionately come up with solutions to it all. And at one time, when Zahid and I were sharing about this a little bit, he asked me a question. He said, how much truth am I, or how much truth do you think people here are willing to take on looking at? And he said, this much or this much? And to me, that was an expression of the breadth and the depth of the truth that's reflected in Zahid's and this couple's being and how they act in the world.
Thank you, Eric. I just want to do a quick reminder. There's beautiful food still over here, and there's cake over there. Thank you. And there's rocks over here if you would like to create a rock that's filled with blessings for Zahid and Ann. If you have any kind of creative spark happening in you right now. Okay.
Kathleen O'Shaughnessy in the hall. So either you come in or I will volunteer you, or voluntold.
Well, hello everyone. Zahid asked me, I guess it was last Sunday, he said he wanted me to do something about spoken art. I'm known to sometimes burst into song, but I'm not doing exactly that today, but if some of you look around, you'll find a little piece of paper on your table. And I think if you're ready, we'll have a little musical interlude for you. Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us. Above us only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries, it isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be as one. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger. A brotherhood of men. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be as one.
Susan Simons.
Oh, we've got somebody.
Glenn Bushman. Come on in.
Well, Kathleen a little stole my thunder, if you will. I mean, I wasn't going to sing Imagine, but I was, you know, I don't want, you know, I don't think we should let this guy get away completely scot-free. And at Friends meeting, we have one little tradition that when it's somebody's birthday, we start singing Happy Birthday. And Zahid has a strong, powerful voice and a creative choice of pitch. So there is almost a struggle among meeting of see who can choose a pitch to sing Happy Birthday on, because Zahid's already chosen a couple. But it gets so that we do sing Happy Birthday with great enthusiasm, even if not precision. And thank you, Zahid.
Thank you, Glenn Bushman. Susan Simons.
I just have a quick something. Someone reminded me that we set our clocks forward tonight.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Which means Monday when we go, I want to make sure that your clocks are set properly so we all make it to the church on time.
Thank you so very much. Susan?
So Zahid and I am thinking this is going to be the first of several celebrations. The rest will come after Monday. And my first memory of Zahid and Ann was one that I never thought I would be a part of, and that was marching in a 4th of July parade in Tumwater. And marching next to me was Zahid and Ann, and Zahid was carrying this huge American flag. And we were there under the banner of Interfaith Works, which we were all a part of. And that really touched me because I, like all of us do, we all come from families of immigrants. And I don't remember anyone in my family marching for anything, let alone, including the 4th of July. So that was one memory of the two of you that I really cherished, because who better to represent this country, really, than you two. And another nice memory I have was I'm relatively new to Quakerdom, and my first extracurricular Quaker activity was, I think it was an anniversary party at your house.
Just because party.
Yes, a few years ago. And that was really a wonderful entree into this wonderful spiritual community. So I teach at the Evergreen State College, and I'm currently teaching a program on the prison industrial complex. And by no coincidence, my students and I watched a video today of immigrant deportations. And my students, who are mostly returning adults between the ages of 20-something and 50-something, had no idea this is happening. And they also had no idea, and I must admit, I wasn't up on it either, the financial cost of not only the immigrants being deported, both legally and illegally, but of immigrants who are legally immigrating into this country, the thousands and thousands of dollars that it costs them to get a visa and to get clearance. So with that, I have a poem that I'd like to share. Thanks, Ed. And this is a poem that is read at the synagogue on many Shabbat services. It's by Judy Chicago. And then all of what has divided us will merge.
And then compassion will be wedded to power. And then softness will come to a world that is often harsh and unkind. And then both women and men will be gentle. And then both women and men will be strong. And then no other person will be subject to another's will. And then all will be rich and varied. And then all will share equally in the earth's abundance. And then all will care for the sick and the weak and the old. And then all will nourish the young. And then all will cherish life's creatures. And then all will live in harmony with each other and the earth. And then everywhere will be called Eden once again. Thank you for the inspiration that you give all of us.
I just had an idea of how many communities are in here. Like, how many of you are part of Interfaith Works? Some. And Quakers? How many of you helped fix Ann and Zahid's home when they had so much trouble? How about Veterans for Peace? How about Friendly Water for the World? Who else? Like, who am I missing that Ann and Zahid have impacted? The UUs, yeah, the Unitarians, of course. Fellowship of Reconciliation. Progressive Democratic Party. TCTV, yes.
Ground Zero.
Ground Zero.
Works in progress.
Olympia Coalition Against Nuclear Weapons. Works in progress. Olympia Solidarity Network. Olympia Assembly. Just Olympia. The food co-op. Yes.
The Olympian Coalition to Abolish Nuclear Weapons.
Yes, yes indeed. Who's in the house? Occupy! Who is in the house? Occupy in the house. There's a brother sitting right there smiling at me, and there's a nephew of me I want to hug, but I can't go here. And Occupy Olympia is in the house. Alex, would you come share something? Come on, Alex. So there was a thing called Occupy Olympia. It started at a Sylvester Park. Professor Zahid Sharif, who passed away, Peter Bomer, and Larry Mosqueda, and me spoke. And after that, David Rovick sang, and we all, it all caught fire. And Occupy Olympia started at Sylvester Park. And then we all came here, and there was a brother comrade here, and we used to man the medics tent and give out free supplies. When our state failed, our county failed, and our city failed to provide for the people, we made a commitment to provide for the people ourselves. It's the people which will help people, and we showed that to the state for the longest time. And there was a comrade there in arms with me.
Hi. So, Zahid likes the spotlight. I don't like the spotlight, so this is not a comfortable place for me to be. But I do want to share when I met Zahid at Occupy. I met Zahid at Occupy, and it was, it was a very interesting time. It was an interesting encampment, and it could be a chaotic experience. So there was some really tense times over there. And during one of those tense times, when everyone was running around, freaking out about one thing or other, and we're trying to hold it together, all of a sudden, here comes this guy wheeling himself into the encampment, and everybody's gathered around, and I see like this somebody's holding court in this, and all these people around him. And I went over to check it out, and he was telling everybody, to get grounded. He was like, get grounded and be peaceful. And his words were just so powerful and had so much impact and really calmed everybody around him down. And I remember being really, impressed with you at that time because of the way that you were able to spread calm. And I wasn't feeling calm, particularly at that moment. I was feeling like there was a lot going on, and you really helped ground me and bring me a sense of peace. So I appreciate that. And that's been my experience of you since, is I see everywhere you go, you make peace for people. And yeah.
I love you, bro.
Okay, that's it for me.
Okay, either you'll come or I will call you. Wendy. Wendy Tanowitz, everyone. Without Wendy, it was Wendy's dream, it wouldn't have happened. And many other, there is Maggie right here somewhere. There is, Dennis. There is, Jody Mackey. There's Doug Mackey, and all the wonderful people. So remember, this is our legacy. Don't let anybody say, oh, it's the people who are fighting themselves. No, people who are together. It's the special interests which want us to fight with each other. Thank you.
So when we were going around and saying what group you were part of, the only group that I could think that I was a part of was Keep Zahid Home. Really, I remember we sat around Zahid's kitchen table maybe 8 or 9 years ago, and somebody was there who, I forget his name. He was Fun. He thought of the name Keep Zahid Home, and Douglas was at those initial meetings, and we made banners, and we made this crazy banner that Zahid was wearing his military uniform, which we later learned he's not supposed to wear unless he's on active duty. And we had this flag in the back, and the flag apparently was not hung properly. So we had this huge banner, it was a vinyl banner with these two horrible faux pas in it, but we still have it. And so we did a lot of press work for those way back when hearings, this has been going on a long time. And I don't know, I guess that's it. So I met them because I was very interested in immigration. I've been interested for a very long time, and I saw their picture. There was an article in the Olympian about how the government was trying to deport him. And then I was at a hearing on immigration in Evergreen, and they walked in. It was like, oh my God, there they are. I just read about them in the paper, and it was like, well, and the rest is history. So here we are, and I hope we'll be together again after Monday and be celebrating the end of this ordeal. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Who would like to come? Anyone who would like to share? Okay, come on in, Roy Treadway. And after that, I think my brother Kyoki will speak. Come on.
Could somebody bring me a cup of water, please?
I just want to say that I don't have all the stories that the rest of you who have been here with Zahid do. We met Zahid for the first time about 3 years ago. We knew him through our Quaker meeting, but he and Ann were maybe one of the first of our neighbors in Lacey to invite us over to be in their house and to welcome us to the community and sort of show us around and how things were done. And somehow that was a very special time for us to get to know a fellow resident of Lacey, because everybody else is from Olympia or someplace else. And it was just good to know that there were other fellow Lacey residents, yes. And so I appreciate very much. And we learned about their garden and all their wonderful fruits and so on. And I guess my other thought about Zahid in particular is I was startled to learn about a year ago or so that he wasn't a citizen of the United States. I mean, that just blew my mind. How could someone who was so much part of our community, who did all the things that he and Ann do, not be a citizen of the United States? And this, to me, is one of the major issues that I have no sense of why that should be. And so I'm assuming that on Tuesday and afterwards that we will have with us our fellow residents of Lacey. Thank you very much for being with us.
I'm Carolyn Treadway. What I remember about that time at your house was all the fruits and vegetables. Every square inch had something edible, and we loved it. We absolutely loved it. And I don't want to talk about Zahid and Ann. I want to talk to Zahid and Ann, and just say how much I admire you, and I admire you. What an inspiration you have been to me ever since I met you a few years ago, and how much I believe in you and your gifts to all of this and all of us and all of the world, and how much I love you.
No, I think Regan wants me next time. Do you?
Aloha.
Aloha! Let's try that again.
Aloha.
Aloha! The first time I met the two of you was actually at Sherry Goulet's house. She had a new batch of progressives, and she was feeding our bellies and our hearts and souls and minds. And of course, whenever those things are being fed, Zahid and Ann are there. And I had heard about them, but I had never met them. And they walked in and they gave us the what's what. They were telling us who the power players were, what the issues are, and how they all intersect, and who needs to be defended and who needs to be stood up for. And so that was my initial introduction to the two of you. My daily introduction is this. When this latest round of ridiculous hearings were going on, I would call, late at night, we'd call each other, and I would try to be there for Zahid. And I would try to say, hey man, how are you doing? Brother, what can I do? And I could not get a word in edgewise. Because he would talk about some other someone else's injustice, or some other issue that came up, or one of the many projects that we're working on. And if you know Zahid, then you're probably working on a something. So, but I could never bring it up because he was always, we got to do this, we got to do that, we got to go there tomorrow. And I'm like, your hearing's the day after. Well, we got to do this, we got to do that. And I realized what he was doing. He was organizing and planning for all of those things that he does. But I understood then that he was trying to help me because he knew how much this situation was just tearing me apart inside. Right? So many betrayals going on. And he knew it hurt me, and so he was doing, by bringing up the next fight, the next thing that we're working on, he was doing what he always does, which is stand between someone being hurt and the thing hurting them.
Good job.
So I think, everybody's thinking that, and I really wish you had let me know you were going to ask me to say stuff. But I want to say, aloha is the giving and receiving of love, and you have so much aloha that you give to so many of us, and I just want to thank you for that. And I know that Monday is going to be a good day.
Yes.
All right. My grandmother, and I would like to share something about my family history. My grandmother, the daughter of the chief of the chiefs. We all know colonial and imperialism. So here it is, Punjab being divided arbitrarily. So overnight, my grandmother and my father, a child, just about Tobin's age or so, became a refugee. So what happened is that my grandmother took my father and ran to the forest. And she will travel at night, heading straight west, looking at the stars. And at daytime, they will hide in tall crops or forests. My father saw his own grandparents being killed in front of his eyes. No child needs to see that when they're 8 or 10 years old. Then we arrived, after June, July, August of hot summer, Indian summer, they arrived with, no shoes and hungry and thirsty, in a refugee camp. My father still remembers very well that, unpaved roads, there was no water, and he will, there were little potholes, and he will spare them so he could drink water. So he hasn't forgotten. All the wells heading west were poisoned. So whenever they arrived at a well, the Silk Road and all the other things, the trade routes. They had wells for centuries and centuries, for thousands of years. They will take some water out, give it to a cat or dog, and it will instantly die. So the thing is that we need to learn there's only one human race. Love is my religion. Humanity is my family. So these artificial creations we call borders, to control us, to divide us, to pitch us against each other, so that the elite and the ultra uber can profit from suffering. So I have said many sayings in many languages. I have made one saying, and I'll challenge you to correct me on that. Show me any social or moral evil, and I will show you its roots in a paradigm of war and violence. Show me any social or moral evil, and I will show you its roots in a paradigm of war and violence. Whether that be I-5 corridor and domestic violence in 1 month, and all the domestic violence shelters getting filled up, is associated to Stryker Brigade coming home. Okay, or anything else, you name it. We use our collective wealth not to make refrigerators or ovens or other things. We make 80,000 pounds of aircraft carriers, and after a few years, the defense industrial complex, we sink them in Pacific and Atlantic Oceans so that the defense contractors can get new. So we need to know the root cause. The radical means going to the root cause of problem. There is sometimes we are aware of some things that we never wanted to see, we never wanted to know. But by chance, by coincidence, by being in the wrong place at the wrong time, or right place at the right time, if you believe in destiny, you get to know those things. And when you get to know those things, it is your testimony. I know in many faiths, bearing true, faith or testimony, and how we live to change that paradigm with love and non-violence, with a commitment, with a deep-rooted commitment to non-violence. This is how we ask for peace. So, anybody else who would like to share something? Phil, either you come here or come on in, Vanessa. Phil, either you come here or I will call you, bro. So come on after, bro. Come on, you!
Hi, everybody. My name is Vanessa Malapodi, and so I'm very new to Olympia, very new to the state of Washington, and I moved here from the state of Indiana in July, and I call myself and my family, we call each other refugees of the Trump administration. So when I moved here, and prior to moving here, I was extremely active in my community, very active, very driven. And when I came here, I was completely deflated, and the day that I met Zahid, the day that I met them, I was able to witness the kind of people that they are. They were literally take their clothes off their backs and give them to you. And I know that because I'm wearing their sweater. And I wasn't gonna wear it today because I didn't want to be corny, but then I thought, you know what, it just feels right. And I'm wearing it. So after meeting him, and after meeting them, and also meeting Keoki, which I met before I got to meet them, and coming from Indiana, I was like, I'm gonna go to Washington and I'm gonna kick some ass, but that's not what happens. The reality sinks in, and it was like, I'm a refugee, pretty much, and I was a refugee to the U.S. When we moved here from Nicaragua in 1988. So moving here felt like, oh my God, I just left my entire community behind. Our friends that we've had forever. And the one glimmer of hope that kept me from completely losing it, because I did get depressed, and I'm finally getting out of it, were two things. First of all, I joined the Democratic Socialists of America, and second, it was them. And how they continued to, and Keoki's so right, they continue to create all these projects and, you know, to remind me that, hey, you know, you still have the responsibility to your community. And there have been times that I have missed many meetings, but then there's that little thing in there saying, you know, you still have to go, because they're going. And even with everything that they are going through personally, they still have this light and this fearlessness to empower the community and to keep telling us, you are your brother's keeper and you need to get up and stop getting depressed and go out there. And that's exactly what they have done for me. Believe me, I have finally, and I made a joke recently on Facebook when I said, I feel like I'm finally becoming, you know, myself again. I'm finally back to fighting with people on Facebook. But it's true, I'm finally getting to where I used to be. And it's because your example and, you know, how you're out there and you have this huge fight that you're still dealing with, and for years, and you have never giving up to giving back to your community, and that makes me feel like I have nothing to complain about. You are the jewel of this community. You truly are, and I am so very grateful that I got to meet you on that day, and that you saved me not only from getting cold, but also from completely falling into a deep depression. So thank you.
Jack Zeiger.
I first encountered Zahid right out here at Occupy Olympia. He doesn't even know that probably. I don't think we actually met that night. I just went down to see what was going on and had one of their circles in the evening where they were doing their business, and that was all new to me. All those symbols, and now they were repeating what they did, and all the stuff I still don't really understand very well. But I just remember noticing Zahid there. People, there was something about his presence there. People were really looking up to him, and he was speaking a message of peace and love. And that's the main thing I remember from that encounter. A few months later, he showed up at Quaker meeting, and that's how he's been ever since, speaking a message of peace and love. And he always has this positive spirit and a smile to greet everyone he meets with. And I just love your spirit, Zahid. And it just seems like any worthwhile movement around Olympia he's involved in, as we've seen tonight. And you just go to something worthwhile in the community, probably Zahid's going to be there. So the idea of not allowing him as part of our country is just amazing to me, and I don't know what they're thinking, but let's not let this happen on Monday.
Who's in the house?
So, I'm a universalist, anti-statist, anti-nationalist. I'm against all borders. If Zahid was the worst person in the world, this should still be allowed here. But of course, it's the exact opposite. This is somebody who's a real gift to our community and to the world, a true fighter for peace. So it's particularly tragic that the state is targeting him. They have no moral ground to stand on, of course, as usual. And I first really started to get to know Zahid through creating some people-powered institutions, directly democratic People's Assembly that tries to work on mutual aid and direct action projects. And out of there, we helped to create the Olympia Solidarity Network together. And through there, we now have a network that is long-term and is able to fight for people's rights, whether it's workers getting abused by their bosses, whether it's tenants getting abused by landlords, whether it's people buying stuff from the store getting abused from the people selling, because Hanson Motors were trying to really screw over Ann and Zahid, and we helped protest them, hopefully doing a good amount of economic damage to them to make it so they couldn't meaningfully extract money from y'all, because even though they're trying to get $40,000+, we probably have caused that much money in losses to their business. But yeah, Zahid and Ann are two people who think long-term, and they think in terms of organizations, which is why there's so many different organizations that have been involved here tonight, or members of organizations involved here are talking, because those are ultimately the things that we need to win, is long-term organizational thinking. And to make those long-term organizations to have a certain kind of character of freedom to them that negates the terrible hierarchical systems that we need to negate.
Yeah.
So right, just a little bit of history. I don't know if many of you know.
You do.
My father was a union organizer in current day the 6th largest country on the planet and the 7th largest country on the planet, being Pakistan and Bangladesh. He was a union organizer for all Pakistan financial unions, credit unions, banks, and all that. And activism I learned on the lap of my Aunt Salma. Aunt Salma was my dad's younger sister. So they will leave the three of us at home, and my father, my mother, and Aunt Salma, they will go protesting on the economic conditions when the executives of the banks, the top executives are getting 800% pay raises. They had a problem to give 5 to 8% raises with all the inflation to workers. So my mother, my father, and Aunt Salma will leave us home, the three of us, and will go and protest. And when she will come back, I will see that her eyes are swollen and she was beaten by the police and tear gas and all that experience. And I will say, I was a child and I was upset. I said, how could that be? This is wrong. And I was upset and angry. And she will be holding me, and the tear gas and the tears will be coming from Aunt Salma's eyes, and said, no, Zahid, this is the price for solidarity. This is the price for creating a better world. This is what we must pay to create the world we want to live in tomorrow. And this is what we must do today for each other. So that message of solidarity in the community is what keeps us together. I think if anybody remembers Occupy happened, our economy got collapsed. We all know the privatized profits and socialized losses. We all know what happened. The banks got bailed out, and we, the people, the 99%, we got sold out. So then, right here in our community, there was an old couple. They had to burn their kitchen table to get heat. Okay, and then what happened is that because they have spent their money on medication, and we said no, it should not happen in our communities. It shouldn't happen here and now. We have a shared responsibility. So there were two dear friends. They were the founders. And we helped them. So Ann and me were the coordinators of Time Bank. Anybody who knows what a Time Bank is? So yes, so Ann and Zahid were the coordinators for Lacey, Olympia, and Tumwater. It happened in the county. So any down trees, we'll cut them, we'll split them, we'll store them, we'll age them, and we'll deliver them for free. That was the only product we did. Otherwise, it was trade and sharing of services. Why? Because this world is abundant. There's lots of things. It has everything for everybody's need. If we don't have out of control greed. So this is what we need to curb, the out of control greed. And this is more than enough. And so then we saw that we can have all our needs met regardless of whatever calamity, natural or man-made, in this case the banks, man-made, fall upon us. So, and the messages are very clear. When the Cuba had embargo, what made Cuba go through? They made a very much tighter community. They helped each other out. And this is at the end of the day what we have. Thank you.
For those of you who may have arrived a little bit late, most of us have these beautiful, wonderful little purple wristbands. If you do not have one, please get one. There's some pieces here on the table, and join our wedding community here.
Kim Dobson? Yes. Come on in. Anybody else would like to share any words?
Good night.
Okay. Regan Unsold. I think I saw Krog also. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Come on in.
Woo!
Patty, Patty, Patty.
Yeah.
As I look around the room here at the patchwork quilt of humanity sitting here, each of us, whether we've spoken or not, has our own stories. And that in many respects, the story of humanity is really an anthology to which we all contribute. I wanted to share a couple of pieces of that patchwork anthology. I spent my formative years living in Kathmandu, Nepal. And when I came back to the States in 1967, there was a lot of stuff going on. I was a high school sophomore. And over the 30 years that I taught high school social studies here locally, I would always tell my students at the beginning of the year that I experienced extreme culture shock upon my return to this country, and that I'm pleased to report I have not yet recovered. Some years later, my aunt and uncle came to me. They were considering going to Nepal themselves and taking their 2 young children. And they wanted to know if I had any suggestions or advice for them. And I said, yes. Thank you for asking. You will be giving them a great gift, a gift of transformative experience, of stepping outside this society and being able to see the world as it is seen and experienced by others who share this planet. And that is a great gift. You will also be giving them a great curse, because they will never again be able to fit comfortably back into this country. And then I paused and I thought about that. And I said, and there's a gift in that too. Years later, late 70s, my closest friend was a student out at Evergreen, Ali Ramazani. He was from Iran. The hostage crisis, you may recall, the overthrow of the Shah, the Islamic Revolution, seizure of the U.S. Embassy. And Ali was invited to speak to a class at Timberline High School, which had unusual architectural design in that they had only lockers separating classrooms, no traditional walls. And my friend Ali was invited, and he brought me along to offer context of what had happened in Iran, including the overthrow of the democratically elected Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh. And word quickly spread that one of them was in the building, one of them Iranians. And so as my friend shared his story, heads were popping up over the lockers, and the neighboring classroom teachers finally gave up and brought their students in to hear Ali. And at the end of the conversation that he had, one of the students came up to me and said, I still think we should nuke Iran, but I want to see Ali get his family out first. You know, when you're trying to create context within which people are able to acknowledge and see the humanity of the other, sometimes it takes small little steps, but I still get goosebumps when I remember that young man coming up to me and sharing that with me. I was tempted to ask him, what about Ali's cousins? Does your embrace of the humanity of his family extend that far? And I just want to say that for me, Ann and Zahid symbolize, represent, manifest that connection with the humanity of others, including especially those with whom we have disagreements. My friend Ali returned to Iran. He and I made a had a decision to make. What were we going to do in response to the U.S.-Iranian crisis? I decided to go to Minneapolis and serve as the national unpaid staff person for the Coalition for U.S.-Iran Understanding, and he went back to Iran to do work there. And some years later, he was trapped there by the Iran-Iraq war that broke out. Was not able to leave the country. He had married a U.S. citizen, had a green card, but by virtue of the fact that he was trapped in Iran for over a certain period of time and was only finally able to get out of the country on an improvised visa, flew into Seattle where he was detained by immigration. And he had a perfunctory hearing and was deported back to Iran. And for a number of years, we had to exchange letters and coded messages because of the insecurity and the risk that he might be subjected to. But one thing that we were able to convey without coding was that the waters of the ocean that wash up on our shores here in the South Salish Sea are the same waters as those that wash up on the shores of Iran and all other lands of this little planet of ours, and that we are all connected in that manner by our humanity, by our stories. And I want to thank Ann and Zahid, and I want to thank all of us for allowing that story to resonate within us. I thank you, my friends.
There's a saying, Dr. Kandif really likes that a lot. God bless all people, no exceptions. God bless all people, no exceptions. Anybody know of a radio station called Chaos? The show of hands. Chaos. Anybody knows there on Saturday, like today, 4 to 6, there's an Indian music show, Bollywood show, it's called Jungli Hour.
Jungli Hour.
Woo! So Jungli means wild. The colorful coalition of we the people. There's Brother Sai here in the corner. Either will come to the, or I will call him out. So come on, bro. Come on, bro. Come on. The host of the Jungli Hour at Chaos.
Also, another thing on Chaos is
Kim Dobson. Absolutely. So, so we need to know, we need to have the intellectual depth, we need to have the reservoir of knowledge, so we cannot be conned, so we understand those cause and effect and other things. Well, give it up for the host of the Jungli Hour, Brother Sai.
Good evening, everyone. Yes, I do host a show on Chaos, which is a lot of fun for me, and it's a lot of cultural expression. But I think tonight is definitely not about me, but it's about Ann and Zahid, and the stories I've heard so far have been heartwarming, eloquent, and educational. It's taught me a lot about both of you, so it's very, very informative. I think a lot of people of what I've heard is their first times meeting Ann and Zahid, and where they met, and times that they have shared, and from what I heard most recently, a lot of activism and political movements in Olympia. I'm from Los Angeles, and I moved up here 9 years ago. My wife dragged me to Olympia. I had no idea where Olympia was, because if you live in California, that's all you know. There's not 49 other states. It's just California. The United States is just California. But I've learned that not only is there Washington, there's Olympia, and it's become near and dear to my heart. And when I tell my family now, at first they said, "Did you move to Seattle?" I said, "No, I moved to Olympia. It's the capital of the state, you know." But more importantly is, my parents were immigrants as well. I am from Trinidad and Tobago in the West Indies. My parents immigrated to the United States like a lot of immigrants did through New York City when I was 12 months old. Was a resident of the United States till I was 15 or 16 years old. So for me it was quite simple. Your parents became citizens, you automatically became a citizen as well. So I've never had to think twice about the struggles and the adversities that Zahid has had to go through, even though I have never stepped foot in a recruiting center or a military recruiting center. And the fact that he has served this country and not become a citizen is sort of an oxymoron, right? And we all have these great rights, and you know, we all have our American U.S. passports that allow us such ease in entering and exiting countries that I've, you know, gone to myself. And it's, my wife is from Bangladesh, the one that brought me up here. She dragged me, by the way, up here to Olympia. She's from Bangladesh, and we went through the process of getting her citizenship and so forth. And seeing it firsthand is quite interesting for me. So to know that the struggles you two have had to go through for so long is just reprehensible, right? I mean, it's just ridiculous.
It's torture.
It is torture. It's terrible. And I work in Seattle, so I'm gonna try to definitely be there on Monday. But going back to when we first met, my parents I'm Muslim, and my parents taught me, wherever you go, wherever that is, look for the mosque, the local mosque. I found the Olympia Mosque, the Islamic Center of Olympia, and I think that's where we first met. And since then, you know, we've all been to our house, and we see each other at all these different things, and it's like somebody mentioned they're from Indiana. Whenever somebody meets someone from their locale, wherever that is, it's a brotherhood, a sisterhood, it's whatever. And in our case, it was the fact that we're both Muslim, and his last name is Chaudhry, my wife's last name is Chaudhry. It's spelled differently, but whatever, they're the same. And it's a connection. It's a connection that I think it's just, I can't explain it, right? Like, I've known this guy for so long, even though I haven't. But and I think all of you express the same feelings, that this Olympia is such a nice, tight-knit, familial community that it's when one of us goes down, we all go down. When one of us rises, we all rise. And I think that's such a great story. And growing up in you know, it's funny, I tell people at work, I tell people wherever, you know, I grew up in a county that has 15 million people in LA County. Just in a county. And Oregon and Washington combined are 11. So when you have such a tight community that is stronger than 15 million people, it's just really nice. And I was talking to my wife the other day, and we're like, oh my God, we're Olympia and it's raining, and we can go back to Malibu and, you know, all these different things. But we like it, you know, and these are the people that make it, and all of you make it really nice, and traditions. It sucks in here, man. It's the worst place, right? This is the greatest place in Olympia. And I appreciate you all. Thank you for listening to me. And if you'd like to tune in, I'm going to plug the show.
Oh, yes!
Thank you.
Jungle Hour. He's an amazing musician. His father is an amazing musician, and his brother is an amazing singer also. So, anybody else who would like to come? Oh, please. Kim Dobson.
Keep bringing that name up.
Yeah.
I didn't bring a guitar. Well, hello everybody, and I love you all, and I already talked too much, but I love these two, and I'd like to take the good fight for disadvantaged people anytime I can, even if it means pissing off the officials.
I'm sorry. That's just what I got to do. And so I don't like being. I don't like doing fuzzy radio or fluffy radio. I want it to make a difference. And when I had Zahid and Ann on this Thursday, I think we really probably made ICE pretty angry.
Just sharing the facts, bro. Just sharing the facts.
Just sharing the facts. We didn't say anything that wasn't true.
No, it's from the news.
But yeah, it's a joy to live here in Olympia. I've lived here, had the pleasure of living here about 60 years. So yeah, I was raised in a Mormon family, so I'm from central Utah. So, but haven't been to church since I was 11. But this is not about me. We want these two to stay here with us. We love you.
So Patty Imani in the room, would she like to come? Will she take? Is Brother Scott Yost would have anything to say? No? Donna Schumann is here, I see. Anybody else? Audrey Tucker, my sister, is over there. My nephew still hasn't made it to the stage.
Well, first of all, y'all look beautiful. You know, my family came to Washington about 100 years ago. And I like that I have some connection. I like that one great grandma's in Centralia. The others are on the eastern side. I like that my parents and grandparents. But here's the thing, that is the truth of it. They came here during the allotment, which is when the initial agreements with First Peoples were broken, and the bulk of the lands, after they were taken, for those who survived, they were taken yet again. And that is when my family came here to the state. So, you know, it's a reminder to me that those who call ourselves citizens of the United States so easily, you know, there's usually no honor in that history, even if our family were good, and even if their stories were hard. So I guess, you know, I love this community. It also feels very empty because I see there's a lot of value lacking. So I guess all we can do is recreate what's real. And so I thank you for helping and teaching us what that is.
Gary Garst, would you please come? Gary Garst, the teacher. Somebody asked the Caliph, Harun Rashid, who is the most suspected person? Who is the most suspected person when it is stretched from Africa, all of the Western Europe, all the way to Asia, the empire? And he asked the king, not the king, the Caliph, chosen by the people, and he said, who is the most suspected? He said, the teacher. The teacher. His two sons will take pride in taking his shoes after the teacher has finished meditation, because we must show respect to our teachers. And there's the one teacher I admire a lot.
Well, on that note, I was enjoying just listening. Ironically, my name's Gary. I just finished having the honor of teaching a class on immigration policy history. And ironically, in walked this gentleman, and with Ann. James invited him, I think. And boy, did I not only gain inspiration from him quickly, but I learned a lot. And So here's what you did for me. Hopefully you do this for everyone. It brought me right back. I'm an American history teacher. And it made me think over and over every class that you came. What the hell is an American? And who should be considered one? And I kept going back through American history, through our heroes and heroines, and I started going through a checklist in my head over and over again. Was it service to this land? Check. You know, unlike President Bone Spurs, but is it someone who leaves the place better than you found it? Check. Is it someone who seeks to assist and not take? Unlike Dick Cheney. Anyway, yeah. And then I got to thinking about it. John Adams once said, when the conversation was, are blacks Americans? And he said, well, yeah, they're humans and they're here. And that's all I need to know. And I don't care where you came from. I don't care what your name is. I don't care what your ancestry is. Do you do those things? Do I do those things? Maybe we should ship some Americans out because they don't do those things. But you have left this world a better place, this man included, just for what you do, believe, and say, and by your raw example. And God bless you for that. And salam alaikum.
Roberta, Donna Schumann, any of you would like to share any words? I don't want to call you, but unless you want to, would you like to say anything? Maggie, would you like to say anything? Please? Anybody else? Oh. All right, well.
I am not an eloquent person, but I am very proud to be a friend of Ann and Zahid. I have turned to you so often for help on gardening, chickens, and life, and you've always been there. And always, I mean, I see you, and it's always a hug. You're beautiful, beautiful people. A couple years ago, my husband Jack and I sponsored a series. There was a series of videos about climate change, and I think we had to subscribe to HBO or something, or Showtime, in order to be able to do it. And so we invited people over, and Ann and Zahid came over, and we had wonderful talks. We had a wonderful time. But I'm going to say that on Tuesday, when we celebrate that Zahid and Ann have prevailed, don't break bread, pop popcorn.
My favorite.
Her favorite.
We are butter sisters.
I love that.
Hi everyone. I wasn't planning to talk, but you said my name. My name is Roberta, and I met Ann and Zahid through the Hour for Hour Time Exchange, where we had the great idea of building community, and I was very excited about that because so anytime I want to get involved in an organization or learn something, I say, hey, I want to do some sewing. Ann's a seamstress. Hey, I'm working on my garden. Ann has a gardening background. Hey, what about this stupid political thing that's going on? Zahid knows. Is there an organization that does this? I get invited all the time. These guys are a wealth of knowledge for me. I never get tired of being a lifetime learner, and clearly they don't either. I guess one thing I want to talk about when we were talking about people from different countries is my mom went back to college when I was 10 years old, and we were at Montana State University, and she had to take a class. This was in the 1980s. She had to take racquetball, and there were two men in the racquetball class that Mom was with. One was from Iran and one was from Iraq, and they played racquetball together, and I saw the news. And I was really concerned about these two men who my mother explained to me were actually very, very good friends and shared common ground, shared a common culture, and were in the United States to learn. And that's what I think is where it's at, is just sharing, not looking at the politics, but the human and the people. And I do plan to go on Monday. I took the day off, so.
Yes!
Thank you. Stephen Aldridge or Chris Carson?
Oh.
Anyone? Sure. You want to say something?
Hey.
Oh, good, Alex.
Hit that.
Hi, you did that.
Is that church?
Yes. He's talking about Unitarian Universalist congregation in West Olympia. I know this child when he was so little, and time flies. Time really flies. So, would you like to share some words?
I just wanted to say, these two, I think they compete for the best smile at the Unitarian Universalist Church.
Thank you. Thank you.
This is my son, and he's a proud, naturalized American citizen. I like knowing him.
Thank you. Chris Carson? Stephen Aldridge?
So, to say where did I first meet you, I have no idea. I am extreme, as many of you perhaps know, I'm very, very active in our community. Peace, social, economic, environmental justice is the big tent that I live under and work under. And when I'm involved with all of those various issues, who do I run into? Over and over and over again, most wonderfully. I don't regret it, but it's always Ann and Zahid, always. They are always so active, so real, so genuine. I mean, even like I went to the Olympia Family Theater recently to see 3 Impossible Questions. Who was involved with the backstory of that and getting that together in the script work on? Oh, Ann and Zahid. Yeah, even if you go to a play, you know, it's anywhere and everywhere. I come originally from Cleveland, Ohio. To dare to say we are not a nation of immigrants? Have you ever been to Cleveland? Come on, that's all Cleveland is. It's just every, I mean, my neighborhood, it was Ecuador, Italy, I could visit Hungary, Finland, you know, it was all over the world, you know, I just opened the door, Czechoslovakia across the street, you know, it was everywhere. And so we are a nation of immigrants. To dare to say we're not is not reality. And before I came here this evening, I am also involved with the Film Society. So I did I was doing my shift there. And people, you know, the other folks on the shift, I'm getting ready to, you know, they said, well, you're going to go in and watch the movie? I said, no, I'm going to go. My friend, you know, I told them. And the whole shift, I want to tell you, people there that didn't know, and I told them, and they were all shocked. They said, how can that be? And I said, I can't explain it. I don't know. But they are trying to deport him. And so I bring a message from them, and they don't know you, but they care. And 2 of them said, we didn't know that was happening in our community. They said, that happens here? We hear about that, but it's always somewhere else. I said, no, it's here. It's right here. In our own backyard, it's here. And so there are just so many concerns. I didn't jot some of them down, but yeah, you are so valuable. You're cornerstones. Don't take out the cornerstones. And yeah, I love you. I love you both. I love you both. And Ann, you work so hard. Oh my God, Ann. And this is just for the Film Society. I just want to mention we were showing an Afghan film, a film about, it's called The Breadwinner. It was up for an Oscar for Best Animated Film. It's a story of an Afghan girl during the Taliban growing up and pretending to be a boy so she could help her family. the breadwinner. It's every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. in the month of March. And it's family friendly, but all ages will appreciate it. Kids 12 and under get in free. And but stay. Don't leave us. Stay. Stay.
Thank you.
As you say to every dog, sit, stay.
Thank you. Thank you. So I would like to share something. What is community? Grandmother said, it's not the place, it's the people which makes a community, which makes a place what it is. You can be in hell and you can make an oasis. You can be in heaven and you know, don't have the depth of understanding what is happening, and it would not be a good place to live. I'll give you an example. After 9/11, I was praying in a mosque in Yakima. The rock came and hit me as it has many times. It broke the window and hit me while we were trying to meditate, you know, before sunset for a few moments. So I remember it happened a lot of time, and graffiti and everything. But that was 9/11. I know 2 countries, one is before and one is after. In this community, you know what happened after 9/11? There somebody left flowers, and 5 people came and at both mosques and Lacey and Olympia and said, look, while you're meditating on Friday, if you're not meeting because of that, we'll be outside and you go ahead and pray. So that shows the solidarity of Tahrir Square. So, you know, the Arab Spring, and we all know the rest.
So I too tried to hide in the back of the room and had my name called out. Tried to slip away. Wasn't going to speak. Not sure what I might say. I want to celebrate Zahid and Ann, good friends. We bump into each other again and again, as others have shared. And I guess what we celebrate is making the world a better place, a fun activity, a meaningful and a rewarding activity. I don't go skiing anymore. I don't see as many movies as I used to. There's many recreational activities that I have less time for because people like Zahid and Ann have helped me find meaning in contributing to the world and making the world a better place. Things like what I would share, as others have. So a current activity, our representative, Denny Heck, told me recently, or one of his aides did, that he has 50,000 constituents who are serving at the Joint Fort Lewis McChord, and that there are 70,000 vets whom he sees as being very like-minded with the 50,000 active military people. And so all of the issues that I bring to him, he says, well, you know, you really need to get others to speak up too, because we've got these 120,000 people who I represent who have a very different opinion. And he said that recently when I was asking him to co-sponsor a bill to remind President Trump that the Constitution says Congress is the body that declares war. And we wanted him to do that to decrease the probability our president, or a president, will again take us into another war. So something to leave you with, in addition to celebrating Ann and Zahid, then go home and write your congressman and ask him to co-sponsor this piece of legislation that says our president can't give North Korea a bloody nose just because he's inclined one night to do so. And thank you, Ann, and thank you, Zahid, for being part of all these different activities and helping make them fun, meaningful, and rewarding.
Anything to say? I will part with these words. I'll part. Please. Anne has something to share. Yes, boss.
So a few years ago, I was right here on this stage doing a presentation on CARP, Controlled Application Review and Resolution Program, which was a secret, previously secret very illegal, immoral, and unethical program that USCIS, which is United States Citizen and Immigration Services, had created. The other name for it was Muslims Need Not Apply. And part of my presentation was the poem by Martin Niemöller. He was back in, I believe, Nazi Germany in the time of the Holocaust. And he created this at the beginning of this poem. He says, "First they came for the socialist, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionist, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew." And when I did my CARP presentation, I added to this poem. "Then they came for the Native Americans, and I did not speak out because I was not a Native American. Then they came for the Negro, and I did not speak out because I was not Negro. Then they came for the Irish, and I did not speak out because I was not Irish. Then they came for the Japanese, and I did not speak out because I was not Japanese. Then they came for the Hispanic, and I did not speak out because I was not Hispanic. Then they came for the alien, and I did not speak out because I thought I wasn't alien. Then they came for the Muslims, and I did not speak out because I was not Muslim. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. And in just the few years since I added to this poem, we can add a lot more, and we can keep on going. We need to be able to not get to that point where there's no one left to come for us. And I thank you. I thank you all from the bottom of my heart.
I would like you to leave with 3 L's: love, life, and living. We are alive, but so many of us are not living. We must live. This moment is the present. It's called present for a reason. We need to cherish it as a present. We must make it count. Regardless of all the things and adversaries which happen to us, which might come our way, we must cherish this present. We must look forward to the old saying, what we give away of us is what we truly keep. What we give away of us and ourselves is what we truly keep for our memories. So remember, love, life, and living, and make every moment count. And let's create the better world tomorrow that we all want to live in. And let's start getting working on it here and now. Thank you. Thank you so very much for coming.
Regan created a song. I asked to end with a song, and he wrote one for us. Or not.
Not entirely accurate, but we did sing it at one of your last hearings in Seattle. How many of you are familiar with the song, "Just My Hands Can't Tear Injustice Down"? Just your hands can't tear injustice down. But 2 and 2 and 50 make a million. We'll see that day come round. We'll see that day come round. I have a second verse. Just my hands can't build community. Just your hands can't build community. But 2 and 2 and 50 make a million. We'll see that day come round. We'll see that day come round. And how many of you would like to give this a try? I will play the tune for you. I see 3 hands up, but weighted voting. Hold this. I see my brother out there. He might be able to help me.
Yeah, Prague is our student. Prague, you know the word step, you think it ever
my hands can't tear injustice down. Just your hands can't tear injustice down. But 2 and 2 and 50 make a million. We'll see that day come round. We'll see that day come round. Just my hands can't build community. Just your hands can't build community. But 2 and 2 and 50 make a million. We'll see that day come round. We'll see that day come round. We'll make that day come round.
Thank you. We really can't know the pressure that Ann and Zahid have been living under for so many years. I can say my heart is with you, but I really have no idea of the pressure. I hope it helps that we love you so much and we see you so clearly. And we wish that the court sees you too. Okay. Thank you all for coming. Your stories were beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.